For the early retiree, the most important thing is their withdrawal strategy. The United States retirement system is not built for the early retiree. If you don't get your retirement withdrawal strategy correct, it could cost you tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in those early years of retirement if you do it incorrectly. I'm gonna walk you through a couple different scenarios and a couple different ways that we could think about withdrawing dollars for your retirement strategy in those early years. My name's Kendall Stahl. I'm an advisor and partner here at 210 Financial, and for the past 12 years, I've been helping folks just like you walk to and through retirement, including the ones that are trying to retire early. All right, so when we think about early retirement, typically what that's going to mean is someone that is retiring before 60 or before 59 and a half. All right, and like I said, I think our system is built for those in their 60s and 65-year-old, that age range, to retire in that time frame. But for you, if you're watching this video, you're either trying or you have been successful at building those dollars up good enough or large enough and creating some sort of a financial plan to where there's enough dollars there that you can start withdrawing from them and retiring early. And if you've been watching my videos, you know that I draw these buckets all the time. They're part of the conversations that we're always having. But your tax deferred bucket, all right, this bucket is the bucket that you've saved into for retirement purposes, all right? And when I say you've saved into that bucket, it's because it's been your employer-sponsored plan, it's your traditional IRA or something like that. So dollars in this bucket would be things like a 401k or an IRA, all right? Now, the rest of these buckets also apply. This middle bucket is what we're gonna call our taxable bucket, and this bucket over here is gonna be our tax-free bucket. Okay, now, in our tax deferred bucket, those are your employee sponsored plans that you've saved money into your whole time working because they've offered a match and that seems like the right thing to do. You also have dollars in this tax-free bucket. Also could be your 401k, Roth, right? Or it could be a Roth IRA. All right, and so what are the rules with these two buckets? Well, the rules are, with the tax deferred bucket, when you put dollars in there, those dollars are gonna be stuck in there until 59 and a half, all right? Unless we get a little creative. So we're gonna talk about how do we get creative? Because what happens is if we poke a hole in this bucket and take money out before we're 59 and a half, there's going to be a 10% penalty. How do we plan for that if most of our dollars are in that tax deferred bucket? What are we doing and how are we planning to make sure that we're not paying penalties for retiring early, therefore eating through our nest egg a lot quicker than we should be? Over here in this tax-free bucket, hey, that's also an employee-sponsored plan or a Roth IRA, and the rules are basically the same. We can still have penalties before 59 and a half. With the Roth, though, you can get your contributions out before 59 and a half without penalties if you do that correctly. So there's some details there. Obviously, you need to work with your tax person, your financial advisor, if you're trying to take dollars out of a Roth IRA before 59 and a half, because there are a few details there. You can grab a summary of our video with the key points down there in the description below. All right, and so then our middle bucket, our taxable bucket, this is the bucket that is gonna be a little bit better for us. I guess I should say it can potentially be better for us if we're gonna retire early, because this taxable bucket, this is what some people call maybe their brokerage account or just their investment account, and so on and so forth. This could be your cash in the bank and whatnot. There's no rules with the 59 and a half there, meaning you can put money in or take money out, whatever you want to, at whatever level you would like to. Let's talk about a couple different scenarios. Now I'm gonna just make these scenarios up. I have had clients with similar scenarios, and let's say that we've got 2 million bucks total. All right, let's put 1.5 million in the 401k. All right, for ease of math, let's put 250 in our taxable bucket, and let's put 250,000 in our tax-free bucket. All right, and so now let's think through this. Let's say we're a married couple, or honestly, it doesn't matter if you're single. Let's say we're going to try to retire at an early age. And let's say we're going to try to retire at, I don't know, 53 years old. Okay? We've been successful. We've saved a couple $1,000,000. Everything's paid off. Our expenses are low, but we're going to need money to live off of. And if we're 53 years old, we can't get money out of this tax deferred bucket or out of that tax-free bucket without having to do a few things right until we're 59 and a half. So the first thing that you can do is you can spend through your 250 in your taxable bucket. All right, so what does that mean for you? Well, in that taxable bucket, you're gonna pay, you're not gonna be limited to your age. You can take that money out whenever you want to. There's no penalties, but you're gonna have to pay taxes. So dollars that could be in this taxable bucket could be like cash, your savings in the bank. It could also be like your regular, your joint or individual investment account. All right, and so when it comes to paying taxes, if the money's in the bank, you probably already paid the taxes on it. You might pay a little bit of interest on the, or taxes on the interest, but taking the cash from the bank and going and buying the groceries and doing the vacations, it's really not going to cause any taxes. But if that 250 instead was in a brokerage account and it was invested in stocks, you're going to have what they call capital gains tax. So in order to get this 250 out and to live on that 250 from 53 to 59, that's not going to be a problem. The only thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to pay capital gains tax. All right, now I understand there's a lot of details here. I'm going to summarize this video and we're going to put it in the link description down below so that you can grab the key topics or the key takeaways throughout whenever you feel like it inside of the video. That's easy. We just spend through the 250 first and we wait until we're 59 and a half to take dollars from those other buckets. But hey, what if that 250 isn't enough to get us from 53 to 59 and a half, right? You know, what if we spend through that money before we are 59 and a half? Then how are we going to access dollars without paying taxes, or I'm sorry, without paying penalties? We're going to pay taxes no matter what. If this bucket's gone and we no longer have dollars inside of there, one of our next options is we could go to this tax-free bucket. But there's some questions that we're going to have to ask because we may still not be able to get all of these dollars out without a penalty. All right, so let's pretend that that 250 is all inside of a Roth IRA. All right, and we've put, not a RAF, that's a Roth IRA, and let's say there's 250,000 in there, but we've been putting, you know, several $100s a month into that thing since we were, you know, 18 years old. And, you know, a lot of that's growth. So let's just say over all of the years from 18 to 53, we've put in $100,000 into that tax-free bucket. Those are our contributions. So we contributed 100 grand over whatever length of time, and that account has grown to 250 grand. Okay, that growth of 250 isn't going to be able to come out before 59 and a half without taxes and of course a pre-59 and a half penalty. Okay, but the contributions could, again, talk to your CPA, talk to your financial advisor. These are details that maybe you don't want to go out on your own, but that 100 grand of contributions, you could potentially get those out before 59 and a half without penalty. So once we have depleted our taxable bucket, we could look to our tax-free bucket to potentially get some dollars out of without penalties. Okay, so that's another avenue that we could walk down in order to get dollars out without paying taxes. All right, well, what if we don't even have this tax-free bucket, right? What if you're in a scenario where all you have is a 401k? All right, so let's make up a different scenario. All right, so the new scenario that I'm gonna work with is we're gonna assume that you've been saving money inside of your 401k, all right? And you've got, we'll still say there's 1.5 million bucks inside of that 401k, just like in this scenario before. But in this scenario, we're only gonna have, say, 20,000 bucks in our savings account, which would be considered in this taxable bucket. And we're gonna say we don't even have any money in that tax-free bucket. And so Now we still say we want to retire at 55 years old. Okay. And the problem is that we really have nowhere to get money from without taking dollars out before 59 and a half and getting that 10% penalty. All right. Of course, we have our $20,000 in savings, but let's face it, that's your emergency fund. Like, we can't really spend through those dollars. So all we have is that $1.5 million. We're 55 years old, and we need to be able to get dollars from somewhere without having to pay a penalty and having to pay a lot of penalty. If you're 55 years old, there is the potential for you to be able to get at this 401k and avoid that 59.5% penalty, okay? And that rule is called the rule of 55. This is a little bit of a unique rule, although it's fairly common, but definitely something that you need to make sure you understand and you've talked to some professionals about, whether that's your tax person, whether that's your financial advisor, or potentially even having to talk to the 401k company as well. But the rule of 55 works like this. In the year that you turn 55, if you're still working with that company, so ABC company that you've been working for, and you're turning 55 this year, and you got $1.5 million in that 401k, as long as you're working that year and you're 55 years old, you can get dollars from your most recent or your 401k without having to pay that 10% penalty. All right, so let's walk through that. We've determined that we can retire, but it's just a point of how do we access our dollars? That rule of 55, as long as you're 55 years old and you're still working in the year that you turn 55 years old, you can take dollars out of your 401k without having to pay the penalty. So when we think through that, there's a couple of things that you need to be making sure you understand. The first thing is going to be simply understanding the rule of 55, talking to your financial advisor, your tax person, and making sure they're all on the same page and that you can take withdrawals from that 401k company. But the other thing that I think a lot of people can miss from time to time is that they don't call the 401k company and they say, hey, are you able to process different withdrawals from this 401k? Because I have in times ran into different 401k companies that say it's all or nothing, man. We're going to do one-time distribution. Well, that's $1.5 million of dollars you haven't paid taxes on yet. You're not going to want to take all that money out at once. You could, and you wouldn't have to pay the penalty, but man, your tax bill is going to be ginormous. And so we wouldn't want to do that. Some 401k companies I've ran into that they only will process a distribution, once a year or whenever you call. And so not every 401k company will process a monthly distribution and send you cash on a monthly basis. And so what I'm trying to say here is you want to talk to your advisor, you want to talk to your CPA or your tax person to make sure you understand the rule of 55 and that it applies to you. But then you want to get to the tactical side of things and talk to your 401k company and say, hey, if I retire and I need $5,000 a month or $10,000, whatever the number is, will you process that distribution for me and send me a little bit every month? And just make sure that they're going to do that for you and there won't be any hiccups along the way. The last rule we actually want to go over in this video is called a 72T. So a 72T is just an IRS code that says here's how you can get dollars out of an IRA without paying penalties before 59.5. All right, so when we think about that, let's make up another scenario. Just know 72Ts are a little more difficult, and you're definitely not gonna wanna go at this alone. Talk to your financial advisor or your CPA. All right, but now instead of a 401k, we're gonna have 1.5 million bucks in this thing called an IRA, individual retirement account. You retired or somehow you got $1.5 million inside of your individual retirement account, your IRA, your IRA, whatever slang term you use, doesn't really matter. Let's say you're 52 years old, all right? And now you need to start taking money out of this bucket because maybe you don't have much money in these other two buckets or you have any other way to access this. And so you're gonna use this thing called a 72T, and there's several different ways that you can also calculate how much you can take out of this $1.5 million. So there's a calculation out there that has to do with your age, has to do with the interest rate that we're getting right now in the United States of America. And lots of details there that we can get into, but just really not for this video. And it says, all right, as long as you take X amount of dollars out the same way every year for at least 5 years or until you're 59 and a half, whichever is longer. All right, so catch that, whichever is longer. If you do this at 58, you're gonna have to take the same amount of money out of that IRA for 5 years, okay? If you do it at 52, like we're talking about in this scenario, you're gonna have to do it for basically almost 8 years or until you're 59 and a half, all right? And so there's a calculation, which we can do in a different video, or you can work with your financial advisor to say, hey, I got $1.5 million in an IRA, and I'm gonna use this rule called a 72T, and I'm 52 years old, how much money can I get out of there on an annual basis? And then you can use that to get dollars out of the IRA without having to pay that 59.5, 10% penalty. Hey, don't forget to share this video out to folks that are like you and potentially trying to retire early, but also you can continue to watch videos that we've created. Check out the next one right here, and we'll see you in it.